The doorbell rang just after lunch. I opened the door of my beach house and there they were, my daughter Rebecca and her husband Michael. I hadn't seen them in 12 years. "Mum," Rebecca said quietly, "we need to talk." "Talk," I said. "That's interesting. After 12 years of nothing, now you want to talk." Their faces went pale. Michael cleared his throat and adjusted his wrinkled shirt. For all those years, I'd survived by selling pies and desserts at the Sunday farmers market. My hands got rough from all the work. My back hurt from carrying heavy baskets. But I never completely gave up. Things changed after Rebecca met Michael. At first he seemed nice, but soon every plan I made with my daughter was cancelled. Every call I made was an interruption. He was slowly, methodically, cutting me out. Little by little, I was erased. "It's just close friends from college," she'd say about the baby shower for my first grandchild, a grandchild I never met. "We completely forgot to tell you about the first communion." Each excuse was a knife wrapped in pretty paper. But now, standing at my dream house with the ocean behind me, I could see them clearly for who they really were. I waved them inside. Rebecca walked behind Michael like a shadow. He looked at every piece of furniture, every decoration, every detail of my new life with barely hidden greed. "Sit down," I said, pointing to the cream-coloured sofa. "I guess after all this time you've got a lot to tell me." Michael cleared his throat. "Patricia, we know it's been a few years since we talked, but 12 years, I interrupted firmly. "Not a few years, 12 exact years since you decided I didn't exist." Rebecca finally looked up. I could see tears in her eyes, but they didn't move me like they used to. I'd cried too many nights alone to let her fake tears manipulate me now. "Mum, it wasn't on purpose." Things got complicated. Michael's job, the kids. "The kids I never met," I said, feeling the anger I'd held back for years start to bubble up. My grandchildren who grew up without knowing they had a grandmother who would have loved them. My life became a predictable routine of baking and selling, but the Sundays at the market saved me. I found friendship with other women, like Martha, who knew the pain of being made invisible by their own families. "Kids think once they have their own family, we don't matter anymore," Martha would tell me. "But when they need something, then they remember we exist." Now, watching Rebecca wring her hands nervously while Michael mentally calculated the value of my new life, I understood exactly what Martha had meant. I remembered with painful clarity the day Rebecca told me her final decision. It was a rainy Tuesday in October, exactly 12 years ago. "Mum, Michael and I have been talking," she began, without even accepting the coffee I'd made for her. "We think it's better if you have less contact with us for a while." "Less contact?" I asked, feeling the world tilt under my feet. "What does that mean?" "It means you're not welcome at our house anymore. It means we don't want you calling constantly. It means we need space to be a family without outside interference." Outside interference? That's what my own daughter called me. "Rebecca, I don't understand what I did wrong." "It's not about what you did wrong, Mum. Michael says mothers-in-law always cause problems in young marriages. He says we need to focus on our own family's future, and that sometimes that means cutting ties with financial dependencies." Financial dependencies. As if my love and presence were a burden they needed to escape, Michael says. Michael thinks, Michael needs. At some point, my daughter's voice had become an echo of his. That was our last real conversation. The first few months after that breakup were the darkest of my life. I lost weight. I lost sleep. I lost hope. Martha saved me from completely sinking into depression. She showed up at my door one Sunday morning when I'd been in bed for 3 days. "Patricia, get up," she said firmly. "You have 2 choices. You can stay here dying inside for a daughter who doesn't deserve you, or you can build a new life that's worthy of you." That afternoon, she helped me clean my apartment, organize my recipes, and plan my dessert business. And so my new life began, slowly, painfully, but with determination. Now, sitting in my living room, I remembered every tear, every sleepless night, every lonely birthday. And I saw them there, small and desperate, looking for something from me after turning their backs for more than a decade. So, after 12 years of silence, I said, "What exactly brings you to my door?" Rebecca and Michael exchanged a meaningful look. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Patricia, the truth is, we're going through a very difficult time. The construction company went bankrupt 6 months ago. We lost all our savings. The house is in foreclosure. Rebecca had to quit her job to take care of the kids because we can't afford daycare. We're living with my parents, but they have financial problems too." Rebecca nodded desperately. "Mum, the kids ask why they don't have their own room, why Dad is always angry, why Mum cries at night. We don't know what to do." "Ah," I said, leaning back in my leather chair. "So now I'm useful. Now I exist. Now I'm part of the family. How convenient." "It's not like that, Mom," Rebecca protested. "I've always loved you. I've always thought of you. It was just that circumstances." "The circumstances," I interrupted. "Let's talk about circumstances, Rebecca. When your first son had pneumonia 8 years ago and was hospitalized for a week, where was I? When your second son broke his arm playing soccer 5 years ago, did you call me? When your youngest daughter had problems at school last year, did you think to ask her grandmother for advice?" Each question hit its mark. Rebecca went pale because she knew the answer was the same. She hadn't thought of me at any difficult moment in their lives. "We knew you had financial problems," Michael muttered. "We didn't want to be a burden when you could barely support yourself selling desserts." The nerve of his comment left me speechless for a moment. "I see," I said. "So I wasn't good enough for you when I was poor, but now that you know about my new financial situation, I'm suddenly valuable enough to get a visit." The truth about my money was something they couldn't imagine. 3 months ago, I got a call from a lawyer telling me about the death of my Aunt Helen, my late father's sister, who'd lived in the United States for 50 years. She'd been the family outcast, the one who left young and never came back. Turns out she'd done extraordinarily well. The inheritance included a house in Los Angeles that sold for $1.5 million, bank accounts with another $500,000, and several investments totaling another $2 million. But the most important thing wasn't the money. It was the letter she left for me. In her shaky handwriting, she wrote, "Patricia, I've seen how your daughter has treated you. I've seen your dignity in loneliness. This is for you to live your final years as the queen you always were, not as the beggar they wanted you to be." With that inheritance, I bought this beach house. For the first time in 12 years, I slept in complete peace. "Mum," Rebecca tried to approach me, but I raised my hand to stop her. "I know we made terrible mistakes. I know we hurt you in unforgivable ways, but we're family." "Blood." "Blood," I interrupted with a bitter laugh. "Rebecca, blood means nothing without respect, without love, without consideration. You turned our family connection into a wet piece of paper that you threw in the trash when it didn't suit you anymore." Michael leaned forward. "Patricia, we understand your pain. We understand your anger, but the children are innocent in all this. They don't deserve to suffer for our mistakes." There it was, the card he'd saved for last. The children. "The children?" I asked. "The same children who grew up without knowing they had a grandmother who would have loved them unconditionally. The same children who were denied their grandmother's love for all these years." Rebecca started crying, but this time her tears seemed genuine. "Mum, we didn't think about the long-term consequences. Michael said it was better for the marriage, that mothers-in-law always caused problems." "Michael said," I repeated, looking directly at him. "Michael thought. Michael decided. And where was your own voice, Rebecca? Where was your own heart?" "My voice got lost somewhere between promises of a perfect marriage and fear of contradicting my husband," Rebecca admitted. "But Mum, now I realize everything we lost. The kids ask why they don't have a grandmother. Do you know how many of my grandchildren's birthdays I missed?" I asked. Do you know how many nights I stayed awake imagining what their voices would sound like? Do you know how many toys I bought and stored in a box, waiting for a day that never came? Michael shifted nervously. Patricia, we understand you're hurt, but now we can change all that. The children can meet you. We can be a family again. A family, I repeated. You mean the kind of family where the grandmother is welcome only when she has money to solve the problems of irresponsible adults? Through the large windows, I could see ocean waves breaking against the rocks, a constant reminder of my new freedom. During these 3 months living by the sea, I'd developed a completely new routine. I'd also started helping other older women who, like me, had been abandoned by their families. Martha had moved into an apartment near my house, and together we'd created a small support group. Freedom, Martha had told me, is realizing you don't need approval from those who hurt you to be happy. For the first time in decades, I was living for myself. Mom, Rebecca approached, her eyes red from crying. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I swear on my children that if you help us now, things will be different. I will be different. Different how? I asked. Different until you solve your financial problems and don't need me anymore. Different until Michael decides again that I'm an interference in his perfect marriage. Michael stood up abruptly, finally showing his true nature. Look, Patricia, I understand you have resentments, but the reality is we all make mistakes in families. The important thing is to move forward, not get stuck in the past. After 12 years of deliberate abandonment, he had the nerve to minimize my pain as getting stuck in the past. Move forward. I stood up. Michael, I have moved forward. I built a new life without you. I found peace without your presence. I discovered my worth without your validation. Rebecca covered her face with her hands, sobbing. You don't understand, do you? I continued, walking toward the window. You came here expecting to find the same broken woman you abandoned 12 years ago. You expected someone so desperate for family love that she'd be willing to pay any price for a few crumbs of affection. The truth was, during the first few years after their abandonment, I would have been willing to pay any price, but time and pain had taught me valuable lessons about self-love and personal dignity. For years I blamed myself, I confessed, still looking out at the ocean. I thought I'd failed as a mother. I tortured myself looking for the exact moment I lost my daughter. I turned to face them directly. But eventually I understood the truth. I didn't lose my daughter because of something I did wrong. I lost her because she chose a man who considered having a present mother-in-law a threat to his fragile masculinity. I lost her because she valued her husband's approval more than her mother's love. Rebecca stood up, swaying. Mom, it's not like that. I never stopped loving you. I just got confused. Michael made me believe it was for the best for everyone. Michael manipulated you, I corrected her, but you allowed him to. You chose to believe his lies because they were more comfortable than defending your mother. The silence was deafening. Michael had adopted that rigid posture he used when he felt cornered. So what do you want from us? Michael finally asked. Do you want us to grovel? Do you want to humiliate us as revenge for the past? For him, this wasn't about repairing emotional damage. It was a transaction. I don't want your humiliation, Michael, I replied. What I want is something you probably can't give. Genuine respect, unconditional love, and acknowledgement that you spent 12 years treating me like garbage. Rebecca approached me with trembling movements. Mom, I can give you that. I do recognize all the harm we did to you. I've spent these last few months awake at night, remembering every cruel moment. These last few months, I interrupted. What happened exactly 3 months ago that made you remember you had an abandoned mother? The colour drained from her face. Michael shot her a warning look, but it was too late. You found out about my inheritance. I completed the sentence. Someone told you about my new house, about my new financial situation. That's why you're here. Not for love, not for genuine remorse. But because you discovered the mother you abandoned now has money. Michael tried to take control again. Patricia, that's not true. Of course we heard about your good fortune and we're glad you're doing well, but You came because you're broke, I interrupted. You came because you desperately need money and I'm your last resort. I remembered Martha's warning about people who only see your worth once you have money. Mum, yes, we found out about your inheritance, Rebecca finally admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. But that doesn't mean we're here just for money. We're here because we realized we made the biggest mistake of our lives. You realize now? I asked. You didn't realize during the 12 years I spent crying over your absence. You didn't realize when I spent 3 Christmases in a row in the hospital with pneumonia because loneliness had weakened my immune system. You didn't realize when I had to sell my wedding jewelry to pay for medication. Each revelation exploded in the tense silence. Rebecca knew nothing about my illnesses, my financial crises, the nights I'd thought it would be easier to simply not wake up. We didn't know, Rebecca murmured. You didn't know because you never asked, I corrected her. For 12 years, you could have picked up the phone just once to find out how your mother was. Michael stood up abruptly, frustrated. All right, Patricia, we get it. You're angry, but we're here now. We're asking for forgiveness, wanting to fix things. Doesn't that count for something? For him, forgiveness was something you could get by simply showing up and apologizing. What counts, Michael, is when you decided to come. You didn't come when I needed you. You came when you need me. I walked to the window overlooking the backyard where I'd planted red roses blooming under the coastal sun. Those roses represented my rebirth. For all these years, I continued, I developed a simple philosophy about human relationships. People show you who they really are through their actions, not their words. You showed me I had no value in your lives when things were going well. Rebecca came up behind me. Mum, we were young, stupid, influenced by wrong ideas about marriage and family. But we've grown up. We've matured. You've gone broke, I corrected her without turning around. You haven't matured. You've gone broke, and now that you need financial help, you suddenly remember you have a mother. Do you know what the most painful moment of all these years was? I asked, finally turning to face them. It wasn't when you stopped inviting me to celebrations. It wasn't when you stopped calling. It was when I realized that I loved you unconditionally, but your love for me had conditions you never clearly explained. Rebecca started crying from somewhere deeper, more genuine. Mum, I love you. I've always loved you. It's just that I let others convince me that love was problematic for my marriage. And now that your marriage is in financial crisis, I observed, suddenly that love is no longer problematic. How convenient. Michael had been silent, but I could see his mind working. He finally spoke, more direct and less manipulative. Look, Patricia, let's be honest here. We need financial help. You have money. We're family, even if we've had problems in the past. Isn't it natural for family to help each other in difficult times? At least now we were speaking clearly about what they really wanted. It's interesting you mention the concept of family helping each other, I replied. Where was that family philosophy when I was working 14-hour days selling desserts to survive? Where was that family solidarity when I had to choose between buying medicine or food? I paused. Do you know what's the most pathetic thing about all this? If you'd come a year ago when I was still living in that tiny apartment, I probably would have welcomed you with open arms. I would have cried with joy. I would have forgiven everything without conditions. Rebecca covered her face, her body trembling. Michael had adopted a tenser posture, like a cornered animal. But the money gave me something I never had during those 12 years of abandonment, I went on. It gave me perspective. It gave me the freedom to choose who deserves to be in my life and who doesn't. It gave me the power to say no without fear of consequences. Mum, Rebecca tried to approach me again. I understand your anger. I understand your pain. But don't you think everyone deserves a second chance? Don't you think family love can overcome any past mistake? A second chance, I repeated. Rebecca, you had thousands of opportunities over 12 years to fix your mistake. Every day you woke up was an opportunity to call your mother. Every birthday, every Christmas, every Mother's Day was a chance to remember you had family that loved you unconditionally. Michael shifted restlessly, his eyes still scanning my house, evaluating, calculating. The difference between a second chance and 100th chance, I continued, is that second chances are given out of love. 100th chances are given out of desperation. You're not here for love. You're here out of financial desperation. Rebecca slumped onto the couch. You're right, she murmured. You're absolutely right. We're terrible hypocrites. We're selfish. We're everything you say we are. Her admission might have been moving if it hadn't been accompanied by the obvious expectation that my forgiveness would result in financial help. Acknowledging your mistakes is only the first step, Rebecca, I explained. The second step is accepting the consequences of those mistakes. And the consequences of abandoning your mother for 12 years don't disappear just because you need money now. I went to the kitchen and started making coffee. Not because I wanted to extend this visit, but because I needed a moment to process the surrealism of the situation. While the coffee brewed, I could hear urgent whispers between Rebecca and Michael in the living room. They were recalibrating their approach, looking for new angles of manipulation. I returned with a tray containing a single cup of coffee. I sat in my favorite chair and drank slowly, watching them. "Aren't you going to offer us coffee?" Michael asked, clearly irritated. "No," I replied simply. "This isn't a social visit. This is a negotiation, and in negotiations, hospitality implies equal positions. We're not in equal positions." Rebecca seemed genuinely hurt by my coldness, but Michael showed an expression of reluctant respect. "All right," Michael said, more direct now. "Let's talk clearly. We need $100,000 to save the house and start over. We know you have money. We know we're family. What do you need to hear to help us?" His question was so transactional, it almost made me laugh. He'd reduced 12 years of family abandonment to a simple business negotiation. "What I need to hear," I replied after a long sip, "is the truth about why you really excluded me from your lives. Not sugar-coated versions. The real truth." Rebecca and Michael exchanged glances. It was clear they'd prepared several versions of their story, but none included the brutal honesty I was demanding. "The truth," Rebecca murmured, "is that Michael convinced me you were problematic for our marriage." "Problematic how?" I pressed. Michael took over. "I thought you were too present, too opinionated. I thought you interfered in our decisions as a couple. You always had suggestions on how to raise the kids, on how to handle money, on where to live. And Rebecca always listened to you. She always considered your opinion before mine. There it was, the naked truth." Michael had seen my maternal influence as a threat to his total control over Rebecca. "So you eliminated me because I represented an alternative voice in Rebecca's life," I summarized. "You eliminated me because my unconditional love for my daughter threatened your need to be her sole source of validation and direction." The silence confirmed my analysis. Rebecca finally lifted her head. "Mum, now I understand that Michael is wrong. I understand I need your voice in my life. I understand I made the biggest mistake of my existence." Her words sounded genuine, but they came 12 years too late and in the wrong context. "You understand now that you need my voice in your life," I repeated slowly, "but you specifically need my voice to say yes to a loan of $100,000. Michael, seeing he was losing control, tried one last approach. "Patricia, enough with the psychological games," he finally exploded. "We get it. You're angry. We get it. We made mistakes. But we're here now, asking for help, willing to make amends. What more do you want?" His outburst was exactly what I'd been waiting for. The moment when the mask would fall completely. "What I want, Michael, is something you'll never be able to give me, I replied calmly. I want 12 years of my life back. I want to have known my grandchildren since they were babies. I want to have been present for their first steps, their first words, their first days of school. I got up and walked to a bookshelf where I kept a few family photographs. I took one, Rebecca at 5 years old, smiling with no front teeth, hugging my leg. This little girl loved me unconditionally, I said, showing them the photograph. This little girl called me her best friend, her hero. What happened to this little girl, Rebecca? Rebecca looked at the photograph with intense pain. That little girl grew up and became a weak woman who allowed an insecure man to destroy the most valuable thing she had in her life. Her brutal honesty surprised me. It was the first time all afternoon she'd shown real understanding of what she'd lost. Exactly, I confirmed. And now that weak woman comes looking for the mother she abandoned, not because she's found her strength, but because she needs money. Michael stood up abruptly, clearly frustrated. You know what, Patricia? Maybe you were right from the beginning. Maybe you are too dramatic, too complicated. Maybe it was for the best that we got away from all this emotional drama. After hours of careful manipulation, he'd finally shown his true nature. There he is, I said, smiling genuinely for the first time. There's the real man. The man who convinced Rebecca that maternal love was emotional drama. The man who couldn't tolerate his wife having an independent source of support. Rebecca looked at Michael with growing horror, as if finally seeing something she'd refused to acknowledge for years. Michael, she murmured, do you really think my mum is being dramatic for being hurt after we abandoned her for 12 years? Rebecca, don't let her manipulate you again, Michael replied. She's playing with your emotions to make you feel guilty. No, Rebecca said with firmness she hadn't shown all afternoon. She's not playing with my emotions. She's expressing legitimate pain that we caused her. She's being honest about the consequences of our terrible actions. I watched this exchange with interest. Financial desperation had begun to crack the power dynamic Michael had so carefully built over the years. Rebecca, I said softly, do you realize that even now your husband is more concerned with controlling your reaction than with repairing the damage you did to me? Rebecca turned to Michael with new eyes, as if seeing a stranger. You're right, she murmured. Even now, he's more concerned with being right than with doing the right thing. Rebecca, don't get confused, Michael insisted, but his voice had lost all authority. We need to focus on solving our problems. Your problems, I repeated. Michael, your financial problems are not my problems. Your bankruptcy is not my responsibility. The room filled with tense silence. Rebecca seemed to be experiencing some sort of belated awakening, while Michael struggled between different strategies. Besides, I continued, even if I decided to help you financially, what guarantee would I have that you wouldn't disappear from my life again once your problems are solved? Rebecca opened her mouth to protest, but closed it when she realized she had no convincing answer. During these 3 months living here, I continued, I've developed a beautiful and peaceful routine. I wake up when I want. I help other women who've gone through experiences similar to mine. I've discovered that peace of mind is priceless. I've learned that chosen solitude is infinitely better than toxic company. Mom, Rebecca came up from behind, her voice barely a whisper. What do I have to do to earn your forgiveness? What do I have to do to win back your love? I turned to face her, seeing in her eyes a desperation that went beyond the financial crisis. Rebecca, I said with deep sadness, my forgiveness isn't for sale and my love was never lost. The problem is, you turned our relationship into a business transaction the day you decided I was only valuable when I was useful to you. Michael, seeing he was losing control, tried one last desperate approach. Patricia, if you don't help us, the children are going to suffer. They're going to lose their home. They're going to have to change schools. Can you really sleep peacefully knowing your own grandchildren are suffering? His final appeal? Guilt related to the children. A calculated strategy to touch the most sensitive nerve of any grandmother. Michael, I replied with serenity that surprised me. The children are going to suffer because of the irresponsible decisions of their parents, not because of my refusal to rescue you from the consequences of those decisions. You created this crisis, not me. Rebecca began crying, but this time her tears seemed to come from a deeper understanding. The children are going to suffer, I continued, but they're going to suffer the consequences of having parents who prioritized pride over family love, who chose control over connection, who considered money more important than relationships. Rebecca completely collapsed onto the couch, sobbing with intensity that would have broken my heart years ago. But the heart beating in my chest now had been forged in the fire of 12 years of abandonment. "Mom," she whispered through her tears, "what can I do? Tell me, what can I do to fix this?" "Rebecca," I replied with deep but serene sadness, "some things in life can't be fixed. Some decisions have permanent consequences. You decided I wasn't valuable enough to keep in your lives when everything was going well. You can't expect me to now consider you valuable enough to rescue you when everything is going wrong." Michael stood up with abrupt movements, his frustration overflowing into pure anger. "You know what, Patricia? You're right. You were a mistake from the beginning. You were a constant interference in our marriage. Rebecca is better off without your drama, without your constant need for attention, without your emotional manipulation." After hours of masks and manipulation, he'd finally shown his true essence. A man so insecure he needed to isolate his wife from all sources of love and support to feel powerful. "Thank you, Michael," I said with a genuine smile. "Thank you for confirming exactly who you are and why I made the right decision by not helping you." Rebecca looked at her husband with horror and belated understanding. "Michael, did you really just call my mother's legitimate pain drama? Did you really just confirm that you manipulated me to push her away?" "Rebecca, don't let her confuse you with her mind games," Michael insisted, but his voice had lost all authority. "We need that money. We need to save our family." "Our family," I repeated, walking toward the front door, "was destroyed 12 years ago when you decided that a loving mother-in-law was more dangerous than emotional bankruptcy. Now you're reaping what you sowed." Rebecca stood up, staggering, following me to the door with uncertain steps. "Mum, please. I swear, if you help us now, everything will be different. I will be different. I'll set boundaries with Michael. I'll defend our relationship." "Rebecca," I said, placing my hand on the doorknob, "you're promising to be different under extreme financial pressure. You're promising changes you haven't managed to make in 12 years of marriage. Why should I believe this crisis will magically turn you into better people?" Michael approached, adopting a more aggressive stance. "Patricia, you're going to regret this decision. We're going to tell the whole town how you abandoned your own family in their time of need. We're going to make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you really are." His threat was so predictable it almost made me laugh. "Michael," I replied with calm that visibly disarmed him. "The town already knows exactly what kind of mother I am. They know that for 12 years I worked to exhaustion selling desserts to survive. They know I never spoke badly of you despite your abandonment. They know I maintained my dignity even in poverty." I opened the door wide, feeling the sea breeze fill my home with fresh air. What they're going to discover now is what kind of children and son-in-law you are. They're going to discover how you treated a loving mother for 12 years, and how you only showed up at her door when you needed money. Rebecca stopped at the threshold, turning to look at me one last time. In her eyes I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Respect. Respect mixed with pain, with regret, with belated understanding. "Mum," she murmured, "I hope one day you can forgive us. I hope one day we can find a way to heal all this damage." "Rebecca," I replied with sadness that spanned decades, Forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. I've already freed myself. What you need isn't my forgiveness. It's to learn to live with the consequences of your decisions. Michael left first, clearly furious and defeated. Rebecca followed him slowly, turning back several times as if she wanted to say something more, but the words never came. I watched them walk to their old beat-up car, their small figures against the backdrop of the infinite ocean. After 12 years, they'd finally left my life in the same way they'd entered it, seeking something for themselves without offering anything genuine in return. I closed the door gently and returned to my living room where the silence felt like a blessing. No shouting, no manipulation, no drama, just peace. I poured myself a glass of white wine I'd been saving for a special occasion and went out to my terrace. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. My phone rang. It was Martha. "How did it go with the unexpected visitors?" she asked. "Exactly as we expected," I replied, taking a sip of wine and feeling peace settle into my bones. "They came for money, not for love. They confirmed everything we already knew about them. And how do you feel?" I watched a seagull glide gracefully over the waves. "I feel free, Martha. I feel completely, absolutely free." In the following days, news of Rebecca and Michael's visits spread through town, but the reactions were the exact opposite of what Michael had expected. The ladies at the market expressed their support. "You did the right thing, Patricia," Mr. Peterson from the bakery told me. "A mother who respects herself teaches her children to respect her too." 2 months later, I received a text message from Rebecca. It was simple, without manipulation. "Mom, I'm in therapy. I'm learning about toxic relationships and healthy boundaries. I hope that one day, when I'm truly ready to be the daughter you deserve, you might consider getting to know me again. I love you." I didn't reply immediately. I saved the message and continued with my new life, my mornings of gardening, my afternoons helping other older women, my evenings in contemplative solitude. The money had given me many things, but the most valuable wasn't the house or the luxuries. It was the ability to choose who deserved my time, my energy, and my love. And I had chosen wisely. The end. What would you do in this situation? Would you have helped them despite everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to hear more real-life stories like this one, make sure to like and subscribe.